Back on the SportsMax Zone, we're shifting now to cricket. In 1983, a group of West Indian cricketers travelled to apartheid South Africa to participate in an unsanctioned series. The series was part of the South African Rebel Tours, 7 of which were organised between 1982 and 1990, after South Africa was banned from international cricket because of the apartheid regime. Teams from Sri Lanka and England visited the troubled land, but the Windies teams that toured in 1982-83 and again in 1983-84 were by some distance the most attractive. Now, at the time of the Rebel Tours, Nelson Mandela, South Africa's future president and unifier, was still incarcerated, but many of the West Indian players who toured insisted their visit was less about money and more about their presence helping to bring positive change. However, that rhetoric wasn't brought across the Caribbean, and the players were banned for life on their return. Now, Ashley Gray has written a book, The Unforgiven Missionaries, or Mercenaries, the untold story of the rebel West Indian cricketers who toured apartheid South Africa. Gray says he grew up fending off bouncers and sledges in Newcastle, New South Wales, before moving to Sydney, where he is now a sports writer and sub-editor. He was inspired to write this book after a chance meeting in 2003 with Richard Austin, one of the rebel players. The book, which revisits the lives of the 20 West Indians who went on the rebel tours, is both a Guardian and Time Sports Book of the Year and was shortlisted for the William Hill Sports Book of the Year. Ashley Gray now joins us on the SportsMax Zone. Ashley, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. I know it's early morning in your neck of the woods. We certainly appreciate your early rise to be a part of the SportsMax Zone. Can I start by asking you about that first meeting with Richard Austin that triggered your aspirations to write this story?
Sure. Look, I had been doing some reporting in the Caribbean of the 2003 Australian tour, and there was a one-dayer at Sabina Park, and afterwards, in the taxi ride back home to my hotel, I was talking to the taxi driver, as you do, and we were talking cricket, and we were talking World Series cricket. And he mentioned that there was a World Series cricketer, an ex-West Indian Test player, Richard Austin, who was begging in the streets nearby, and that he could take me to him if I wanted to see him. And I thought, wow, this is something that you would not expect to see ever in Australia or in England, I imagine. And so he took me there, and I found Richard, and he was not in a good condition. He was actually literally sitting in the gutter, running with a couple of vagrants, and he was swinging rum from a plastic bottle, Coke bottle. Mm-hmm. And he proceeded to tell me that the reason why his life had spiraled out of control and why he was actually in the gutter was because he had been on these rebel tours, and he'd been banned, as you said before, from playing cricket for life. And he wasn't able to cope with the social ostracism that happened to him after coming back to Jamaica, where the reception for the rebels was very hostile. So that was how I met Richard, and he was a lovely guy. He was very entertaining, very friendly, and he actually wanted me to contact Kerry Packer so that he could come to Australia and play for New South Wales and coach them. But he was 48 at the time, so I suspect he was half joking. But that seemed to be the way that Richard sort of operated, and I really was kind of charmed by him. But I wrote a story on that at the time that appeared in the Sydney Morning Herald, and I always knew that in the back of my mind there was a bigger story to tell. Then when Richard passed away in 2015, I wrote an obituary for him for a website here, and I realized then that these guys' stories hadn't been told, and they were getting a lot older, and if I didn't tell them, perhaps no one would.
Yeah. All right. His story, though, actually, you would know, was one of, based on your research and so on, several of the rebel cricketers who had a very, very difficult time on their return to the Caribbean. His story, probably one of the worst stories, and as you said, he died at the age of 60 as someone on the street begging and so on. How emotional was that meeting for you? And give us an idea of the kind of common thread that ran through other stories that you would have gleaned from the other men you spoke with.
As I said, I found that with Richard, I felt very touched by his story and his predicament. And of course, as I researched the Rebel tours, I found out that a lot of the guys who had been on the tours had in some way experienced a sort of similar treatment. I know that, for example, Herbert Chang, another Jamaican, had a mental breakdown after the tours, and he has been living in the shadows for the last 35 odd years. David Murray in Barbados, he is living a very minimalist life there, and he's been involved in certain activities that you wouldn't expect a first-class wicketkeeper, as he was, one of the best in the Caribbean, to have experienced. He was telling me that he still gets people telling him that he was a race trader and that he had sold his soul by going to South Africa. So you also had the fantastic Lawrence Rowe, who came back to Jamaica, and he was a national hero, as you know. He batted like an angel. He was idolized by Viv Richards, by Malcolm Marshall, by Desmond Haynes, by Michael Holding. But when he came back to Jamaica after captaining that squad, he copped a lot of criticism, and he ultimately decamped to Miami. So that was reaction that he had because of what had happened to him when he got back to Jamaica. You also had someone like Bernard Julian in Trinidad, who was a fantastic all-rounder in the mid-70s, but whose career was on the wane by the time he went to South Africa. And what happened with him in Trinidad was that, he found he couldn't cope that well with the opprobrium that was heaped on him by various sections of Trinidad society, and his life spiraled out of control too. So there were lots of hard luck stories, and also I must mention Everton Mattis, who was the elegant, tall batsman from Kingston, who went on the tours and then came back to Jamaica. And he told me that he was getting hassled by the police, that his friends wouldn't speak to him. So he suffered a real terrible ostracism, and he moved to New York, where his life spiraled out of control, and he ended up in various states of, various terrible states, I suppose, terrible predicaments. And it's only recently that he's got his life together, and it was really fantastic meeting Everton in Poughkeepsie, where he now lives in.
Okay, Ashley, Wayne Lewis here. In your conclusion of the writing the book, and because I know you did some extensive investigation, because even I got involved, you contacted me and sent me some video of when I spoke at Richard Aston's funeral that I'd never seen before. You sent it to me and so on. So in your summation, did you see those West Indian cricketers as mercenaries or missionaries, or do you view, the outcome of the 2-year tour of them going to South Africa?
I don't really think it's for me to say whether they're mercenaries or missionaries, Wayne, but to me they were human beings first and foremost, and people do make mistakes in their lives, and perhaps a lot of these guys at the time did make a mistake, but I think the title of the book is The Unforgiven, but it's certainly a time now to forgive the fellows who went on the Rebel tours. I know that some of them feel that by going to South Africa, they opened up at least white eyes there, because white spectators had rarely seen black athletes live. They'd only ever experienced black people as laborers or maids or servants. So here were these fantastic athletes, the best of their generation, and they were absolutely smashing the South African side, which contained legends, the caliber of Barry Richards and Graham Pollock and
Ashley,
Parth LaRue, yeah.
I'm sorry it appears I'm rushing it, but we started running out of time. I need to ask you this question. I've had extensive discussions with Lawrence Rowe about this entire tour. I went to his house in Miami, and we sat and we had a drink, and he told me absolute everything, his experience in South Africa. I've also spoken to Colin Croft because there was this talk about honorary whites, and they had to go there, and that was part of the agreement. But Larry so refuted that, and also was Colin Croft. Did you ask any other guys about this label, honorary whites?
I did ask them, Wayne, yes. And there was no such thing officially as honorary whites. But what you have to also remember is that they lived life in South Africa in a bubble. They were able to go places that your average black man was not able to go. They were able to go to nightclubs. They were able to stay in international hotels. They were able to fraternize with white women. I mean, they weren't honorary whites as such, but they certainly had privileges that your average black man did not have. So, yeah, that's how I see that, Wayne.
Yeah, Ashley, great talking to you here on the SportsMax Zone. Had a pretty detailed look at your book. Congratulations on a very, very well done publication. And I think everyone should have a look at it. Anyone having interest in West Indies cricket or just generally life, because it does say a lot. Congratulations and the awards that you've gotten for it as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I hope.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Wayne, I know you played cricket with Lawrence Arrow and so on, and you would have known a lot of these players as teammates and players that you would have associated with. I knew Everton Mattis quite well. In fact, I played for Barbican in 1979-80 when Everton Mattis was an outstanding midfielder for the Barbican football team. Tall, elegant, very, very skillful. And like Richard Austin, just a natural ball player. And I know a lot of time has passed and a lot of people haven't forgiven them for going, but these were very, very highly skilled sportsmen who had lost their spot in the West Indies team, and the temptation to make some money from a pastime that they were gifted in must have been huge for them. And I know they have paid the price for it, but it was for them, a lot of them, a very difficult choice to make. For others, it seemed a no-brainer. No, you can't go to apartheid South Africa.
I'm telling you, Lance, I was playing for Kensington at the time. We had Richard Austin in our team, Lawrence, of course, and also Herbert Chang in that team. And I remember when there was so many talk about them going and the ninth and so on. But once they finally left, it opened the door for so many of us. There were Morgan, Jimmy Adams, myself, and so many others got into the Jamaica team eventually because of the exodus of those players. And I remember, I'm not good at years, but I remember when the ban was lifted and Richard Austin came back to Kensington to play his first Senior Cup match. It was against Melbourne. It was the biggest crowd I've ever experienced.
That was when the ban was lifted.
That's when the ban was lifted and he was playing his first game.
But by then he had passed 40 though.
Absolutely. He took 5 wickets, brilliant catch, and made 50 odd. It was a huge crowd at Kensington over that day to witness the return of Richard Austin. So that tells you the type of influence and how talented they were and how brilliant of cricketers they were.
Yeah. Any quick comments, George, before we wrap the segment?
Yeah, just quickly, it's a topic and an issue that I've studied extensively. If I were to make a hard conclusion, although it's difficult to make a hard conclusion, I'd be leaning toward mercenary side, because guess what? If these West Indies players, these black players, had been organized by a black man, if they had come together themselves as a gentleman, there is an opportunity for us to do this. Let us go and show the black South Africans who are used to doing menial jobs and who are fourth-class citizens in the land of their birth and the land that they own, that they can be athletes, prime athletes like ourselves, and they go. But gentlemen, let's not beat around the bush. Let's not dress it up. They went for coin. And because they went for coin, because they were invited by the white paymaster, that is why the people of the Caribbean will never forgive them. And I'm not saying that a man who serves a sentence should not, upon release, be welcomed back into the fold. But unfortunately, the way life is, there are some crimes you commit where you're going to be behind bars for the rest of your life, even when you're not physically there.
George Davis, Wayne Lewis, the segment here dealing with the Rebel Tour, the West Indies cricketers going to apartheid South Africa and breaking the understanding, the Glen Eagles agreement that had been global, that there should be no participatory involvement with South Africa in any shape, any way, shape or form. We go to break, back with more on the Zone after this. Don't forget that on Wednesday morning, the Lanka Premier League final, the Gaul Gladiators with Chadwick Walton against the Jaffna Stallions with Johnson Charles. That's 8:30, 9:30 Eastern Caribbean time on SportsMax. Don't miss it.